Greetings and hello to everyone. This is the Business of Betting podcast, and I'm your host, Jake Williams. Today is episode 16, and we have professional poker player Alan Bari joining the podcast. Alan is a World Series of Poker Bracelet winner and has amassed millions of dollars in poker winnings over his career. We discuss a whole host of topics, from his bracelet winning tournament to intuition and tells at the poker table, Phil Ivey and his casino cheating scandal, traveling the world playing Texas Hold'em, game theory, optimal betting strategy, staking players, and more. As always, you can find us at businessofbetting.com or at bettingpod on Twitter. Please fire in any questions or feedback and potential guests you would like to hear from. So thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy my chat with Alan Bari. Today I'm joined by professional poker player, or retired professional poker player maybe, Alan Bari. Alan, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Jake. I appreciate it.
So Alan, you said in 2011 that you were the best poker player in the world, or there were reports that said that you claimed to be the best poker player in the world. Is that true? And what was your mindset back in 2011?
No, I don't really think I ever thought that. Maybe like 2008, 2009, I actually thought I was the best in the world. But I don't know. Back then, you say stupid stuff. Can I curse on here?
Yeah, absolutely. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, you say a lot of stupid shit because there's incentive to be like a brash personality and potentially get sponsorship. But 2011, when I won my bracelet, was actually like, it was the tail end of my poker career, really. I think, when was it? April of 2011, I was actually studying for the GMATs. I was going to take the GMATs and go to get my MBA, but during that process, I got fifth at a World Poker Tour event for like 200-something thousand. And then my GMAT studying got put on hold, and then I won that bracelet in 2011 for whatever it was, 874,000. So then I kind of just figured, I don't really want to go back to school for 2 years. But, back then you say a lot of stupid shit.
Okay.
Pretend like you're the best. It's,
okay. So as a wise old man now, you look back and have a bit of a chuckle and a laugh about it. But at the time, that was the industry.
Well, I mean, back then poker was a lot easier. 6 years ago is a lot in the poker world. Now they have simulations and game theory optimal about correct plays, and the humans can't beat artificial intelligence in these heads up battles, which is one-on-one in poker. They solved to a certain extent no limit hold'em one-on-one or heads up. So it's kind of crazy what's happened in the past 6 years. But I mean, now I still play poker, part-time while I run my business, but I would say last year I played almost 1,000 hours, so about 20 hours a week. This year I've played 600 hours, 650 so far, so I'll probably be around 8 to 900 hours. I don't travel anymore like I used to. For 4 years, I was playing, I would say, 8-9 months out of the year. I was traveling to Europe, traveling all over the United States, going to Vegas for 5 weeks every summer, and playing, probably 60 to 80 hours of poker during that Vegas time. But I don't play tournaments anymore. I just play cash games. So, I usually go down to Parks Casino outside of Philadelphia. On Tuesdays, I play about 15 hours there. This weekend, for example, I'm going to Atlantic City. I'm going to be playing Friday and Saturday during the day, and at night, probably play 20 to 25 hours of poker.
So how did it all get started for you? We'll get stuck into some of the transition from being a pro, traveling the world, and then playing cash games now as you sort of develop in your career. But in the beginning, were you playing poker in your teenage years, or earlier than that, or did it start at university? What was the impetus to get you started playing poker professionally?
So I grew up with two of my still best friends, their family played poker, and in middle school we would watch their dad play. He had like a weekly Friday game, and then we started getting our own weekly game. And then so in high school we continued that. We played $2 limit poker. So we didn't play no limit Texas Hold'em, which is the most popular form of poker right now. We would play weird games like stud, Omaha, generally limit games. And then in college, I had sophomore year, I had a dorm with a lot of other poker players, and we would play like $2, $4, $3, $6, pretty big cash games for college, where we would win or lose $100, $200. And then as I got older in college, I started playing in underground cash games at Rutgers. They had these shady cash games where you'd, ring a doorbell and someone would open a garage and they'd let you in, and, they got raided a couple times and they were in like the complete ghetto in New Brunswick. You drive past some random bar that has half the lights out and like people, there would be cops out there half the time. And, one time I drove past and there was actually like a caution tape and someone had been shot out there. So
Sounds like the movies.
Yeah, it pretty much was. And back then poker was really easy. I mean, you were playing with, some other college kids and some other younger guys, and then, a couple older people that were just looking for a private game. New Brunswick's kind of far from any other actual casino, so that the games were pretty good there. And I just realized that I was actually good. And then after college, I worked in finance for 2 years. During that time, I still played poker a lot. My first job out of college was at AIG, and my boss actually let me leave Fridays to go to Atlantic City, which was nice.
Very nice.
And then my second job, I was playing tournaments every Wednesday night, and I won the same tournament like 3 or 4 times for like $5,000. And basically I didn't want to leave because, my mom pretty much said, don't leave. It'll look bad. So then they made me leave by laying me off. And that I got a nice severance package. And I said, let me see what happens. And then I won a tournament online for like $48,000. That was December of 2007. And then 2008 was my first, year of playing full-time poker. And January of 2008, I won a tournament at the Venetian in Las Vegas for $96,000. And I had a very good year in 2008. So
how old were you when you won that tournament at the Venetian?
2008, 24. Or 23 or 24.
So
yeah.
at 23 or 24, you're obviously a young man. You got a lot of winnings, a lot of cash flying around, Vegas casinos, all that sort of stuff. How does that play in your mind? Is it, this is easy, I'm going to do this forever, how much fun is this is great? Or is it hours and hours of hard work, and is it hours and hours of practice and reviewing hands and going over, gameplay and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of both. Back then, I really thought it would be easy to make like $500,000 to $1 million a year, which, to be honest, in 2008, it probably was easy to make that much money. And, my life was really poker back then. I played, like I said, 9 to 10 months out of the year, I was doing nothing but playing poker. During the week, I would play online poker, talk poker. I would go on forums to study hands, talk about hands that I played. It's not the hardest job, but it's not the easiest. It does take a lot of studying, and you have to, if you don't keep up with the game, you'll definitely get passed by. Back then, there wasn't as many other people studying the game as there are now. Today, if you're not studying the game every day, all of these, internet geniuses are gonna fly by you, which is kind of why no limit cash games and tournaments are a lot tougher than they used to be. But yeah, I mean, it was fun. It was a little bit boring when I wasn't playing poker. I would just, Monday through Friday, if I wasn't playing poker, I would just walk around town. And I would say my money management abilities in 2008 were not good. I think I would say I almost went broke in 2009. I would say I went from 300,000 to zero, or almost zero, in 2009, and then I built it back up. So there's a lot of backing that happens in poker where you buy pieces of people, and I made a lot of bad investments in other poker players, and I had people who owed me a lot of money. So that's kind of something I've learned from the game at this point. Now I never loan money. I never buy pieces of anyone really, unless I really trust them. There was actually just a scandal not a scandal, but this poker player, it was in the main event of the World Series. It's a $10,000 buy, and it's like the big one that was just on ESPN.
Yeah.
This guy, he sold pieces of himself in the tournament, but he sold 200% of himself.
Okay, how's that possible?
So it was all individual pieces. So like he'd go to you and he'd say, "Do you want 20% of me?" He'd go to me and say, "Do you want 20% of me?" And he did that to, I guess, 10 people until he had 200% of himself. Now that's fine, and it's not fine. It's not acceptable. It's cheating, because the plan is to never cash in the tournament.
Right, because he's got 20 grand for a 10 grand buy-in. Why would he want to win any money?
Exactly. So he buys in for 10,000. He cashes out, or he never makes it to the money. So he gets zero on the books, and then he takes $10,000 off the table. However, this genius accidentally cashed in the main event. So I don't know exactly what place he got, but he ended up, even though he took $20,000, he ended up owing money that he didn't have. So he couldn't even figure out how to properly, get knocked out before the money after he already stole, all this money from people. So now he owes, it's not a lot of money that he owes, but it's his credit in the poker community is completely gone. And, in poker, that sort of shit happens all the time. You think this guy was supposed to be like a very good, honest guy. Yep. All of a sudden you find out that they're, a scumbag. So that's just the life.
So as the talent pool grows for poker, what are your thoughts on players having God-given talent versus hard work, or is it always a mix of both?
I think that hard work will always outweigh talent, but talent can take you past a certain point that, hard work will stop you at. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. Especially with live poker more so than anything, because, physical reads and being able to tell when someone's weak or when someone has a big hand is, game theory optimal doesn't take into account things like that. Like game theory optimal it's a newish term in poker where, it uses Nash equilibrium to say, I think I'm talking about this correctly, but I might not be, but basically uses Nash, game theory to say, okay, no matter what my opponent does, if I act in this certain way, or if I play my hands in this certain way, that they'll never be able to exploit me. So, anyways, game theory optimal doesn't take into account physical reads and physical tells where I can look at you and determine, whether you're weak or whether you're strong, So it kind of strays away from game theory optimal. But, being able to read people and being able to flow with the game and knowing okay, this guy just lost a couple hands, he's more likely to bluff in this spot, or maybe he's less likely to bluff because he just lost a couple of hands. There's a lot of being able to read personalities that goes into the game that, is, I think, intuition that can't be taught. And no matter how hard you work on that, those things are just things you're born with, I guess. So,
how big a part of your poker play or anyone's poker play is that intuition and trying to have those reads and getting those reads correct? Is that, once in 100 hands it's useful, once in 1,000, or is it can get you in a lot of trouble if you can't do it well or you put yourself in bad spots?
I mean, I think that 99% of people who play poker professionally don't even consider reads. I think I'm different because I grew up playing live poker first. A lot of people these days grew up playing online poker first because you have to be 18 or older to play online poker, whereas in the United States you have to be 21 or older to play in a casino.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would say for me personally, who focuses on live reads a lot more, I don't know, maybe 1 in 20 hands, 1 in 30 hands, it affects, the situation. But it's never, solely the read. It's usually I analyze the way the person played the hand, and then based on that, in conjunction with how they're looking, you can just tell when someone's tense, when they're a little stiff. It's really hard to explain exactly how it works, but you can just tell that they're a little stiff, or they're, why are they acting like this, or why are they talking like this? Is it because they want me to fold? Is it because they want me to call? So I don't know. It's hard to explain out of context.
Yeah, got it.
Because it's just so crazy.
So take us through what it was like winning a bracelet. Obviously, there was the years leading up when you said you were the best in the world. Whether you believed it or not is another thing. And then it took a number of years to get to. Was it 2011 when you won a World Series bracelet?
Yeah, it was June 2011.
So
I'm actually sitting in my office looking at this. My wife made this framed photo with the winning hand and stuff, which is ironic that I'm sitting staring at it. But
so was it a blur, or do you remember, a lot of the hands? Do you remember a lot of the final hands? How what is it as a memory for you?
Yeah, I mean, I remember a couple big hands leading up to it. I would say, so I think it was 4 days. It was supposed to be a 3-day tournament, and ended up being, we had to go to a 4th day because it took a little long. So I would say the end of day 2 is kind of where I started to really increase my stack relative to the field. And most of it came in like one really big hand I played where, do you want me to tell you a hand history? Or is it just completely worthless?
Go for it.
Well, I mean, I had pocket queens on an ace, king, 9, king, deuce board. So ace, king, 9, king, deuce, and I had pocket queens.
So there's a couple of overcards there.
Yeah, an ace and 2 kings. And so I bet the flop, which, is kind of normal when you raise pre-flop. And the guy called, and then the turn I checked and he bet and I called. And the river I checked and he went all in and I called. And that was actually a lot of the reason why I called the river was because of live reads. I had like a really sick live read on the guy that he was just calling me with nothing on the flop to try and like take away the pot. So I called on the river, and he told me later he had Jack 10, so he had the flop was ace king X, so he needed a queen first straight.
Right.
So anyways, that was a really big hand, and that got me a lot of chips, and then I started putting pressure on people, and then at the final table is when I pretty much amassed all the chips. But I mean, there's just so much luck in these tournaments. It's all about like seat draw. If you have a really tough player on your left, you're kind of handicapped because, they can re-raise you, they can call, they can just make your life a living hell.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so many times it's seat draw, it's table draw. Late on day 2 of this tournament, I had professional poker players looking at my table and like laughing at the fact that I had this table it was a $5,000 buy-in. Back then, these tournaments they got a lot of players, so I think it was 900 or so players. So there's usually a lot of pros in them, but I had all amateurs at my table. And that's luck. The fact that I had all amateurs at my table, the fact the final table, I had the 2 tougher players on my right.
Yeah.
There's so much luck involved in non-poker things going on. And I mean, now especially, I appreciate those things, and you have to be good to win multiple tournaments, but to win one single tournament, you'd have to be stupid to say, oh yes, this was all skill. I mean, I did play very, very tough at the final table, and I completely ran over everyone at the final table. I mean, going into the final day, I forget what the chip counts were, but I think I had 9.8 million, and the next person had 1.6 million. Whoa. So I had 6 times the next. There was 4 of us left going into the last day. It was actually funny. So a lot of the times in these poker tournaments, because the pay jumps are so big, you make deals often. So
you mean like 3rd to 4th? There's a big difference in prize money.
exactly. So a lot of the times, heads up, um, you make a deal where, let's say, I forget what. Let me think of what first was 874,000, and I believe second was like 500 something. So a lot of times you'll make a deal where you say, okay, let's say instead of playing for 330,000, we'll play for 50,000, and then we chop the rest.
Right.
So we redistribute the prize pool. So when we came into the final day, I actually offered everyone, the other three players, I offered to take only, it was kind of a ridiculous offer, but I offered to take 840,000 instead of 874,000.
Right.
And then the rest of them could, split the difference. Because I'm actually looking up the numbers. It was fourth place was 255,000, third was 348, second was 540,000. So if they had made a deal with, because all three of them had similar chips,
yeah,
they would have been able to get about 375,000 if they had made a deal, which would have been more than third place. But they laughed at my deal.
So as a lawyer, thinking about all these deals that you poker players have, I'm sure there's no written contracts in place. It's all handshakes and smiles and winks and nods. Is that right?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, nowadays, a lot of like the European Poker Tour, they facilitate deals, so they create the contract for you, which is kind of nice, considering how much money these poker tours make. I mean, the Rio or Caesars makes, I don't know, 10 to 15 million every summer from the World Series, but for some reason they feel like they shouldn't facilitate deals. So at the World Series, which is some of the biggest tournaments all around, there's no physical papers that anyone signed. I mean, you can, I guess, have a lawyer on hand or have these documents ready, but everything's done on handshakes, and it's kind of ridiculous, considering how much money's being tossed around. I mean, my first really big score in 2008, it was at the Borgata in Atlantic City. So we chopped 5 ways. So I think there was almost $1 million that we split 5 ways. I got about 300,000 of it, and we basically got $1 million in cash. It's kind of hilarious that this is exactly what happened. We got $1 million in cash, and we went to the back poker table of the poker room, and then we divvied it up based on like whatever we agreed to based on chip counts.
What?
Yeah, it's absolutely insane.
What, so we counting the hundreds and then splitting it up and then getting
Well, they were in 50K bricks.
Okay.
So we were handing out 50K bricks and then breaking down bundles of 10,000s, and then handing out, like, I think one person got like 52,300, so we would have to count out 2,300.
Oh, man.
Anyways, this took like about an hour and a half or 2 hours, and all of a sudden, we realized, oh shit, we were off by 5,000. And one person was missing 5,000, and that we just didn't calculate it properly.
Yeah.
And one of the other guys had already left, and he refused to accept, giving up a portion of his money to make up for the 5,000 that the other person was supposed to, be made whole to. And, he just left and he said, no, screw you guys. So that's kind of an example of where not having these, written documents kind of screwed us, but,
So when you won the bracelet, was that basically the pinnacle of that time for your poker career? Was there anything else you could have won at that time that was bigger?
Yes. Well, so actually 3 weeks or 2 months before that, I played a World Poker Tour event. It was televised, and I got 5th, and first place was 1.15 million. So that was about 6 weeks before I won the bracelet. And, I would say the big things to win are the World Poker Tour, the World Series of Poker, and then the European Poker Tour at the time. So those are kind of the 2 bigger things. But that bracelet that I won that's the summer of 2011. That was the fifth or fourth biggest bracelet event out of about 55. So it was definitely a good one to win, and I'm, extremely happy with it. I was backed, so I only got half of it. But, half of 874 is still a is still a good amount of money.
Yeah,
But
that'll do. So what did you do
yeah.
after it? Do you see the guys who win the Masters in golf go to, I think it was Waffle House. I think Bubba Watson went to Waffle House and had a meal. What was your 2 or 3 hours after you won the big prize?
Yeah, I mean, I was just so tired from playing 4 days of poker. I mean, you play from 12 p.m. until 2 a.m. every day for 4 days. So, and the mental grind of that, especially the closer you get to the money, like every decision actually has thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of consequences. So we just went to a sushi bar, and I had about 25 to 30 people watching the final day. So they just hung out at the sushi place, and then we celebrated a few weeks later. We went to some club, Excess or Trist or one of the clubs in Vegas, and got bottle service. So
Nice.
nothing too special. I did buy a car. I bought an Audi S5 with part of my winnings. So
there you go. So
it was.
Can I ask you about celebrity poker players? I'm not sure if
Sure.
you've seen them in cash games. You probably have, but you see, Tobey Maguire or Ben Affleck,
Yeah.
even Michael Phelps.
Yeah.
What's the deal with these celebrities? Are they just losing cash and having a bit of fun, or are they any good? What's the rub there?
Well, it depends on who. I mean, Kevin Hart recently has been on a lot of televised things. He's very bad, but he's also playing in the toughest. He played on a $300,000 entry fee at the Aria in Las Vegas. So, I mean, he's playing against the toughest poker players in the world. It's all about who you're playing with. There's a rumor that Tobey Maguire is one of the biggest winning poker players in the world. And that's mainly because he's playing in a private Hollywood game on the West Coast somewhere.
Yep.
Where he's only, these private games, you're limiting who's allowed in them. So he's just making sure that no professional poker players are allowed in them. So as long as you're the best poker player at the table, it doesn't really matter what else is going on outside of that. A lot of poker players survive by, it's called game selecting, where they always make sure that there's 3 really bad players at the table, and they won't play in a tough game. If the game gets tougher, where the bad players leave and good players come in, they essentially get up off the table and go home. And these are cash games, not tournaments. Obviously, in tournaments, you can't just cash out your chips. You have to play until the end or until you get knocked out, which is kind of good in a way. But yeah, I mean, the other celebrities, I would say most of them are pretty bad, just because they're actors first and poker players second. So it's hard to get good at poker if you're not giving 100% of your effort into it. But it's definitely good for poker to have these people in it and stuff.
So you like seeing Kevin Hart on those televised events and promoting the game a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, he's funny. I'm not really into promotion of poker, but I have a lot of feelings about what poker, being a professional poker player, and what poker actually is. I don't think it's as positive as everyone thinks it is.
What do you mean
especially
it's not as positive?
Well, like coming from a cash game mindset, especially. We play poker with a lot of people who are just essentially losing $500,000 to $1 million a year, and it's a very predatory lifestyle, which is kind of why I'm trying to get away from it. I still think poker as a game is a beautiful and fun game, but I just think, being a professional poker player, you essentially have to be a predator against bad players.
So
otherwise, you just won't survive.
They're just redistributing the money. Are those players in those cash games, are they playing for entertainment, or are they misjudging their capabilities, and when they get at a table with you and a couple of people at your level, they just don't stand a chance once you get a larger sample size of hands?
Right. Yeah, I would say it's a mixture of both. I think that their original intent is for fun and to make money. And then as the years go by, they realize, okay, this is strictly entertainment. I'm not going to win at the end of the year, but I'm paying $300,000 to enjoy my year of playing poker. They like the competition. They aren't financially affected by the money that they're losing annually, and they just accept it. But I would say in the short term, and by short term I mean less, 3 years or less, they probably think that they have a decent chance of actually winning, which is not true.
And they probably some are successful businessmen, and they've been really good at everything they've done in life, and they got plenty of cash lying around or hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend on entertainment for poker, and then they get in a room and then they think, uh-oh.
Yeah, absolutely. Or they instead of going there's some professional businessmen who like to play blackjack, and they accept that they're probably not going to win, or maybe they don't, but they just say, this is my form of entertainment. This won't affect me financially. I don't care if I lose this money. And I think that's kind of what it is with poker, except there's a little bit more competition. When you play blackjack, you're just trying to beat the house. When you're playing poker, you're physically looking at other, professional poker players that are trying to beat you. And you're thinking in your head, let me see if I can, go head to head with, these great players and see if I can beat them. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of poker players who lie to themselves and say that, oh, they're doing good for the world, they're doing good for the community, blah, 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 that they donate money. But, I mean, at the end of the day, when you sit down at a table, the amount of happiness won't outweigh the amount of unhappiness that happens at the table. If I have a good day, that means that someone else at the table had a bad day. So
right. Yep.
It's just it's a shitty way to make money.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining because it's given me a lot of good things. And it's given me my business, it's given me, everything that I have currently, and I still play it because I still make money off of it, and I'm trying to completely get out of it. But it's just, I don't think there's any positive aspects of cash game poker, at least. Tournament poker is different, like you can play a tournament for fun, and you're capped at how much money you'll lose. You buy into a $1,000 tournament, you're only going to lose $1,000, and there's a lot more luck involved. So I think an amateur doesn't have as big of a disadvantage as in a cash game. Where patience will always outweigh the amateur, but that's a whole nother story.
Right. I want to talk Phil Ivey, and I came across his story recently from a legal perspective more than anything, but obviously you being a professional, you'll have a good understanding of this. So Phil, it seems like, got into a little bit of trouble with his, let's call it a scandal. So he was edge sorting cards in a casino in London, and I think a few others, and then they decided they weren't going to pay out his winnings while he was playing. It was Baccarat, right?
Yeah. It was either Baccarat or like a modified form of Baccarat. I forget what it's called.
Yeah, so they were playing cards. They asked the casino for a number of different requests, including certain style of cards, a certain dealer, flipping the cards over a certain way. They didn't touch any of the cards, so they weren't actively involved necessarily. But so from your perspective as a professional poker player and someone who's been around casinos and been around certain people in casinos who are legitimate cheats, and then there's obviously this Phil Ivey situation. What are your thoughts on the whole Phil Ivey scenario?
Yeah, I think it's complete bullshit. I think he should have gotten paid. He didn't physically alter any of the cards. He found a flaw in the system and was able to capitalize on it. I know that it's a very fine line between that and cheating, but this is the thing. A casino has an edge. It's mathematically proven that when you play blackjack, the casino has 56 to 44 over the better. So if we're accepting that this edge is allowed by the casino, well, then the casino has a responsibility to make sure that everything is right on their end. If the player finds a flaw in that, well, guess what? That's the player's right, because the casino just has this guaranteed edge. It's kind of like there's been a lot of stories recently where slot machines overpay, or I don't know if you've heard of any of these stories, like a slot machine accidentally pays out like $12 million, and then the casino all of a sudden says, oh, no, that was a mistake. There was an issue with the slot machine. Here's a steak dinner.
What?
So it's like, it's essentially what in poker they call that a free roll. Basically, you continue to lose money, and when you hit a big payout, I can say, no, that was an accident. That wasn't supposed to happen. So that's essentially what the casino is capitalizing on, is a free roll. They collect money, Phil Ivey's making these bets, he's making these bets. All of a sudden, he finds a flaw in the system and is able to capitalize on it. And the casino wasn't adequately doing their due diligence to determine that the cards were right, et cetera, et cetera. And they agreed to all of his terms. And now all of a sudden they say, no, I'm sorry. No, we're not paying you. So it's bullshit. It's complete bullshit.
Yeah,
the casino, yeah.
It seems as though the casino gets to hold on to their upside every single hand and every single day and every single game. And then whenever the player has any type of upside on their side, they just throw their hands up in the air and say, "Oh, we're a private club. We have rules. You can't cheat."
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. And it's
absolutely.
I get it from that
it's
perspective.
A joke.
Yeah, but it sounds like
joke.
It sounds like Phil had like 6% edge or something outrageous like that. And
yeah, I think it was actually. I think it was more. I think it was closer to 8 to 10.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, but
I guess that's why the numbers are up in the millions pretty quick, because I think, the card counting stuff, you've got, 1 or 2% edge on a good run. So
right.
You think about the multiples of a 10% edge, it gets pretty crazy pretty quickly.
Well, I don't know I don't know the exact specifics, but pretty much based on where the diamonds and where they were cut off on the left side of the card, you could actually tell whether it was like a 6, 7, or an 8. So
it probably was a high edge, maybe double digits.
I mean, he essentially knew when to press his bet based on what the dealer's cards were. I mean, imagine playing blackjack knowing what the dealer's down card was. It's just an absolutely insane edge. But again, this goes back to that should be something that the casino takes up with their card manufacturer. That's why the casino should have insurance. That's why the casino pays their card manufacturer to make sure that the cards are done properly. It's something that is absolutely outrageous for the casino to think, oh, okay, you did that, you figured out that this was going on, well, I'm sorry, we're not paying you. But all the other times that everything, is going right and we just collect millions of dollars every year, like the player has no right to say, oh, I dispute this.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So,
it's a joke.
Online poker, April 2011.
Yes.
What impact did that have on you and your life and your friends, and how did that change the whole poker world? Yeah,
so I actually remember that day because I was playing cash games on Poker Stars I think it was a Monday, whatever. I'm not going to try and remember what day it was, but I remember I was playing. All of a sudden, I couldn't play anymore, and I was like, "What's going on?" For me personally, it didn't have that much of an effect because I would say less than 10 to 15% of my annual income was coming from online poker. If anything, for the first year or two that online poker players were forced to play live, it was actually good for me because, going back to live reads and stuff, a lot of these online poker players were coming from behind a computer, now forced to sit in front of actual humans. And they were just really, really bad at shifting to live poker. So I would say it was actually in the long run, it was good for me. And online poker was just never something I was good at. When you're clicking a button versus actually physically putting chips into a pot, there's just like a different feeling. It just doesn't feel like real money. And I would just say that I wouldn't make as clear decisions as I would in real life if I was put into the same hand. For my friends, it was, for a lot of my friends, it was, most of them had to stop playing poker. One of my close friends, he went to get his MBA and actually became an accountant because he was making 95% of his income from online poker. It's kind of crazy what was going on and all of that.
So does it still linger today, like 6 years later? Does it still have an impact on the poker industry?
Well, I mean, now New Jersey has online poker. Nevada has online poker. I think there's 2 other states have online poker. But, the prize pools are just not the same. The player pools are not the same because if you're in Nevada, you can only play against people in Nevada. If you're in New Jersey, you can only play against people in New Jersey. So it limits the pools of people. It also limits how many people are coming up from nothing. The lowest game in a casino is $1, $2, where you sit down with $100. the lowest limit online was 1 cent, 2 cent maybe, or even smaller than that.
Yeah.
There might have been half cent, 1 cent. So you could literally start with nothing and learn how to play poker, which just isn't the case now. So the people who generally are starting to play poker know a little bit more and are a little bit wiser with their money because they're actually risking, decent amounts of money. And tournaments, especially back in those days, you could, buy into for $1 into a big tournament, or I'm sorry, you could play a satellite for $1. So you could play a $1 tournament that gets you into a $100 tournament that gets you into a $1,000 tournament that gets you into the main event for $10,000. Nowadays, that just isn't the case. So it's definitely changed everything. It's changed live poker, but for me, 2011 was kind of, after I won my bracelet, a lot of people would be like, oh, now I can play more because I have more money. I was just thinking, now I can play less because I have more money.
So what's the future for the online component? Because I've seen certainly in the other gambling, and whether it's daily fantasy, for example, there's software now where you can put hundreds and hundreds of entries into contests. Is there going to be software that takes over and game theory optimal software that will take over, and online games will just be basically GTO
Computers
versus GTO?
Yeah. I mean, apparently the computer that you need to actually play GTO just for one-on-one is extremely expensive and extremely large. So I don't think that for the immediate future that's going to be the case. And I think that the computing power to solve six-handed poker is way too big at the moment. So, I mean, I'm speaking from limited knowledge from what I've listened to on poker podcasts and stuff like that. But I don't think anytime soon that'll be the case. And there's also some merit to playing anti-GTO. So, it's hard to play GTO against someone who kind of is all over the place. And you'll see it when you watch televised poker. You'll watch professional poker players play against this completely random guy who, his decisions never make any sense. So it's very hard to combat that, even though GTO, I guess, is technically supposed to combat any strategy. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not as well versed on online poker as others. Live poker is really more of my thing. I think that in order for online poker to come back to where it should be, the United States as a whole needs to legalize online poker, which a lot of people are pushing for in the poker community. I don't know how close that is to happening. I mean, we only have 4 out of 50 states that even have statewide online poker happening. So we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of casinos going up on the East Coast, so maybe it'll just transfer to a mixture of live and online poker where you're just sitting at a table that has, it's almost like live online poker. You're sitting at a table that has buttons. Yeah. And instead of a dealer, you have, I've seen them on cruise ships.
Yeah.
I think if they perfect that, maybe you could play, 3 or 4 tables, but live, so to speak. Maybe your face is at multiple tables with a screen or something like that. I think that would actually be kind of cool. A mixture of both live and online poker.
So do you have any tips for the average poker player who likes to play for entertainment, who might be in Vegas and wants to sit down for 4 or 5 hours and play a live poker cash game, or they might want to even enter a tournament just for some fun? Is there anything, sounds like, seat selection and things like that are out of your control, but are there any things they could be doing just to sort of maximize their chances of winning?
Yeah, I mean, I would say right now playing poker professionally is very, very hard to break into. But if you want to just do it for fun, that's definitely something I would recommend. And, a tournament is a lot of fun. I would say for a tournament, just play tight and, try and pay attention to everything that's going on. People these days are so into their phones and iPads and stuff that they're missing out on a lot of nuances and details of, especially when you're not in a hand. Watch other good players play a hand. See what they do, see what they're doing right. And even bad players. You can learn a lot from some bad players. I think that a lot of top professionals kind of dismiss bad players and never think, oh, what did they just do there, and how can I implement that into my game? And then just with cash games, I would just say to play within your means and within what you're comfortable losing. I see people playing way too big just because they want to play bigger. There's nothing wrong with playing smaller and just being comfortable and having fun. So.
Yep, good advice. So, before I let you go, who are some of the best poker players you've ever seen or played with or against in your time?
I think everyone sucks. So.
Besides yourself, of course.
I don't know. I mean, I don't really. I would say Phil Ivey has definitely been one of the most intimidating players I've ever played with. He has like a very interesting stature. I think he's like 6'1", 6'2", and he just has like a very bold presence. When he comes to your table, you feel it. Whether he's actually tough when it comes to, mechanics of poker and knowing all of the proper moves, that's another thing. I think for a while he was one of the best, but I don't know. I mean, outside of that, I just think there's a lot of young, tough players that people don't really know that have been crushing, like Fedor Holtz. He won probably 12 to 13 million in the past 2 years playing, $100,000 and $500,000 buy-ins. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of tough players these days. So even these days when you see a young European sit at your table, they're usually a really good player. Whereas, in 2007, they were probably bad.
Okay. So if anyone wants to get to or follow some other younger players or players coming through, are there any podcasts or shows or Twitter handles or anything like that? Maybe some names you can suggest?
No, there's no good poker podcasts. They all suck. But one of my friends does a video log or vlog. Vlog, is that what they're called?
Yeah, vlog.
It's called Solve for Why Academy. It's pretty cool. It follows him and a couple other people who are doing like a Las Vegas live academy of teaching you how to play poker. It's called Solve for Why Academy. Who else? Daniel Negreanu, I think his Twitter handle's @RealKidPoker. He's, an old school player who's still been surviving playing poker for 25, 30 years. And he actually did a vlog all summer about what the grind of playing, 40 days of poker in Las Vegas feels like. That I thought was pretty cool. There were 15 to 20 minutes or maybe 10 to 15 minutes every episode. But it gives you a good sense of what it's like to be a professional poker player during that time. I mean, outside of that, they can follow me at Alan
what about
Bari.
At Alan Bari? Can they give you grief on Twitter and tweet at you? And
yeah, sure. ALLENBARI. You can harass me. I get harassed all the time.
I have no doubt.
People talk shit to me.
Alan, thank you very, very much for coming on the podcast. It was great to chat, and I hope to do it again soon.
Thanks, Jake. Talk to you soon.